Erica, you can go ahead and get started.
Okay, thank you. I would like to welcome everyone to today's Autism Society of Iowa Lunch and Learn on Social Skills Opportunities. I am Erica Hurdle, Program Manager for the Iowa Regional Autism Assistance Program and a member of the Autism Society of Iowa Education Committee. Our presenters today are Stephanie Robinson. Stephanie received her BA from the University of South Dakota with a degree in elementary and special education, and her master's degree is from Morningside University. Stephanie has been an educator for 35 years. The first 15 were in the public school system, teaching students in K through 12 plus. For the last 20 years, Stephanie worked at Northwest Area Education Agency as a special education consultant with a focus in autism and challenging behavior. Stephanie works part-time for the Pier Center in the area of social skills. Jan Terps was an autism and challenging behavior specialist within the tri-state area with an immense experience in the areas of assessment and treatment of challenging behavior. Jan works part-time with the Pier Center to support a variety of needs of their clients, including challenging behavior and social skills. With over a decade of experience in the fields of behavior analysts and autism, Jan remains one of our biggest advocates for the advancement and continued training of staff. In addition, Jan was one of the original board members for the Pier Center for Autism. Christine Wheeland is an occupational therapist at ChildServe. Christine has 15 years of experience and is involved with the day treatment program, feeding program, and life skills program. She has experience working with clients in an individual and group setting, focusing on ADLs, IADLs, sensory regulation, work, leisure, and social skills. Christine is the lead therapist for the Life Skills Program, where she has been instrumental in the development and education of the Life Skills Program over the last 10 years at ChildServe. Audrey Wood is a speech language pathologist at the University of Iowa Stead Family Children's Hospital for Disabilities and Development. She received her BA and MA at the University of Iowa and is an Iowa Leadership Education in Neurodevelopmental and Related Disabilities program graduate. She has extensive experience working with children and adults with a variety of communication needs, including autism, speech and language disorders, and augmentative and alternative communication. She is a peers certified provider and Girls Night Out certified provider and has led several peers social skills groups for adolescents and young adults, in addition to frequently providing individualized therapy supporting social communication development. Thank you to all of our speakers for being here today. And as everyone goes through their presentation, feel free to type your questions in the chat box, and we'll try to answer those as we go through today. And now I'll turn it over to our speakers.
Okay, I guess I'm going to start. My name is Jan Turbis, and you heard a little bit about me. Both Stephanie and I have been working at the Pier Center doing social skills. We could actually call it the Social Smarts program. We've been providing services for the last 12 years. That's when the Pier Center began, and found out in our community that was what was really needed was kids that were average kids that just needed some of those extra soft skills. And we've really evolved over the years. We have different groups from all the way from kindergarten through post-secondary. I believe our oldest client was about 25 years old. And the way that we determine who's in the groups are by age and language ability. There's times that we have, even after the first session, we've decided that they need to be moved up to another group. Our groups meet on a 10-week session for 50 minutes, 55 minutes. And then on the 11th week, we have conferences with the caregivers or the parents. It usually is not a one and a done session or 10-week session. We've had kids that have been, they were kids, now they're young adults, that have been with us for, gosh, I would say 6 or 7 years, and they just keep coming back. And the awesome thing about that is that they become friends. So most of the time, not always, but most of the time, we have people from the surrounding areas, probably a good 60 miles away from each other, and they have gotten to be very, very close friends and are supporting each other in doing social things as young adults. Now we'll talk a little bit about our social skills.
Okay, so like Jan said a little bit on how it works, we use a lot of the things that are out there for students with autism spectrum. And so we use social scripts, peer mediated interventions. We do have a couple peer mediators or peer helpers that come in, as you can see in our picture here with some of our younger groups up through our upper elementary age. And they just are there to be good role models, and we kind of work with them beforehand and kind of teach them what we were expecting from them. And what we like about it is the gal in the picture here, her name's Lexi. She has been with us for probably 4 years. So she's even kind of talking about, well, this is what she wants to do when she gets older, which is kind of cool for us to see. And she comes to a lot of our other outside activities, other than our social skills. But like Jan said, with the groups, we try to do them by language abilities, not as much age. We do kind of keep the age in mind, but we also want to make sure that we have the language ability to be able to group our kids or our students together so that they can have good language and conversations going on. What else you want to add to
Nope, that's good. As far as the other thing that we do is we really like to focus on strengths that the kids have. We really talk about what are their interests and their common, what do they have in common? Because we know that most of the social interaction should be based on that. We definitely involve parents and families. So when they come to our center, we have parents make sure that they come in, not just drop off the kids, because we typically like to talk about things with them. And afterwards, if there's anything that is specific, parents feel very open to let us know if they're having some concerns at home or at school so that we can help them with that. And then, like I said, on the 11th week, we always have an opportunity for them to come in and we'll have a conference with them. Encouraging peer interactions, of course. Stephanie just talked about that. We've had 3 or 4 different peers that are able to come in, and due to their sports and their other activities that they have after school, sometimes that's been limited, but at least you know, they have really been a huge help. And you'll see some other photos that we are incorporating that. Teaching coping skills, I think, is one of the big things, because we know that sometimes kids can keep it together here, or they keep it together at school, but then they fall apart at home, or just the opposite. So we really, really try to help with that self-regulation, teaching them different modes to be able to do those kind of things, and use different research. And we're always using research-based information.
And I would say too, for that one, a lot of times we have planned for what we are going to be working on. Like last night, we just had groups. And with our middle school group, you know, something came up and we drop everything and we talk about it as a group. They can pass, feel like they want to share. But that's, you know, that's a really tough age with wanting to fit in and the bullying and everything. So we kind of go with what the students with also and needing help with. So that helps with the
Exactly.
coping skills. And it's a safe zone. So if there's things that you share with us, unless it's going to affect them, you know, if we have any issues that we feel we need to share with parents, we do, but otherwise they can tell us things that they know we're not going to run out and tell their parents. So we do kind of pride ourselves on being able to connect with the kids and maybe get through a little more than they would with their parents without judgment. So here we did during Halloween, we went around and we had different rooms that did trick or treating. So you can see that we had the couple of little boys here are a little more involved with their autism. The one especially at the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, you know, and working on the skills of when you go, you know, what do? You knock on the door, you say trick or treat, and just thank you, and not reaching in the bowl, but being able to wait for it to be handed to you.
Yeah.
Those types of things that we were practicing, and you can see we have peer helpers. One is
Yeah,
handing
perfect.
candy, and the other is back by one of the other doors. So they
And-
were very helpful.
Yeah, and one of the little boys doesn't like candy at all, but the big thing is to, you know, that we were trying to teach him is that he wanted to go trick or treating. So what do you say? And then you just say thank you. And then he, of course, said he was going to give it to his sister, which is great, you know, so.
So just, yeah, working role modeling, practicing, doing all those types of things with the social skills that we were working on.
So we do a lot of different activities. We really divide the group into like segments, especially the youngest group. We know that we have to keep those like in 10-minute increments. And so we do everything from role playing to doing board games or a matching game or something next that has large motor kind of activities. Using social stories, or we use a lot of, well, we always have a schedule up and a written schedule so that the kids know exactly what we're going to do. Some of the kids, like I said, have been here with us for a very long time, but they still want to know what the schedule is and they like to check it off. So those are the kind of things that that we use, and it's pretty routine, but very different each night. Yeah, taking turns, I guess that's a big thing, yeah. Not only with the youngest group, but the oldest group too, taking turns and accepting when you lose. We've really had to practice on that, giving a compliment at the end of the game and not saying just a good game, but what did you like about what did that other person do? That's a really hard thing to do, but the kids are getting so good at it. It's exciting.
Like Jan said, we do some play-based, so this was kind of a fun one where we were working on just taking
Being creative.
Yeah, being very creative. We used, with this group, we used the AIM Explorers, and we kind of go through the different characters and what their theme is. And this one, we just thought, well, we'll just let them be creative and see what they can come up with. And they had to share the activities. As you can see, they were doing their own individual building, but they had the pieces that they had to share. And if somebody had something you wanted, we worked on asking. As you can see in the first picture in the upper left-hand corner, there is a penny board. We do use pennies with this group, just because they really buy into that, where we have a gym, they like to go to the gym, or we have an outside playground, when it's nice, we'll go outside, but they have to have 10 pennies to do that. And then it also is working on some money skills, because if they get 5 pennies, they can trade it in for a nickel, 10 pennies, or a nickel on 5 pennies, they can trade it in for a dime. So we're kind of trying to incorporate some of that in there, but this is the play-based type skills that we work with this group of.
Yeah, and the little guy on the right, we know that this is the first time that he's come. And so he couldn't sit there for that long or engage that long. So he needed 5 pennies, and then he would be able to go over, usually with one of our little peer helpers, and he got to play in the room quietly with some of the other materials. And that worked out really, really well for him. Then he would come back right away and earn his next 5 pennies to go
And
with the
we're
group.
working on, yes, now we're up to like having to earn 6 pennies before he can go
Yeah.
play. So we're working
Mhm.
on building that stamina of being able to sit in a group. Here's another picture where we're working on playing social skills games. The first picture is we were playing a game, and we were reading questions, and then they had to grab it's Serena from the AIM Explorers. They had to grab her, and then they had to answer the question. And it was funny because that night we let them pick their teams, and they wanted the girls against the boys. So that was kind of fun. to get in there and be able to do that. And they really did a good job. They had to take turns. They had to think about what was being read, and a lot of different processes going on within that game. So that was a fun group to do. And then the other group, as you can see, this is kind of it's a busy group. We have a little preschooler in there. He's kind of looking at us,
Yeah.
but we have 2 peer helpers in there because with that group, we need that, and they're working on listening to the stories that go along with our unit that we're working on that night. So then they earn pennies for good listening, body in the group, and using all those different skills that we have been working on.
Here's some of the different programs that we've used and trying to incorporate them. What we've learned, and we were talking about this yesterday, is that the curriculums that we use basically are teaching the same kind of thing, but they just have different terminology. So using social thinking, superflex, social detective, we thinkers, zones of regulation, the aims. Oh, yeah, the AIM Explorers. And then we also have done, which you're going to be hearing about, the UCLA Peers Group. And we both are certified trainers for that also.
So that is the end of our presentation. So we will go ahead and look and see if there's any
Questions?
and it does not look like there are that I can see unless I'm missing them.
And I have
There
down
aren't
that.
there aren't any questions in the chat, but if anybody wants to unmute themselves quick, you can ask your question now, or we'll go to the next speaker and then we can hopefully have some time at the end for more questions.
All right, thank you,
Yeah,
guys.
thanks.
I think you're good, Christine.
Perfect. Let me get my presentation on. All right, so today I'm going to talk about the groups at ChildServe. I'm an occupational therapist at ChildServe, and I've been here for 15 years. I've had experience for the past 15 years on doing the different groups, several of them that we'll talk about today. Check this out, sorry. Okay, so today's objectives is for us to learn more about the groups that are offered at ChildServe, who would benefit from the groups, and also what skills are needed or are targeted at the different groups in ChildServe. We have general group criteria for children and also young teens to be part of groups. So typically, we have at ChildServe right now, we have 5 different settings for outpatient therapy. So we have some in Eastern Iowa, we have one in Ames, we have one in Johnson where I work, and then also at Woodland, where kids and young teens can receive outpatient therapy. Typically what we do is we have the children or young teens go through an evaluation, and then they're brought into individual therapy. And then once the treating therapist feels that it's appropriate for the child or young teen to work on generalizing the skills, they can go on a group wait list. Once there's an opening for the appropriate group setting, and typically these kids also get, or young teens will receive a screening just to make sure that they're appropriate for the group setting and for the other teens or children that would be in the group. So once it's ready, the family would get a phone call, and then to make sure that they're able to come to the therapy during that session. And once that's the case, then the child will start and come in for the 12 weeks. So the whole group criteria that we have is for the children and young teens to work on generalizing the goals in the group setting. So for example, it would be the play skills, the social skills, job skills, chores, which we'll talk more about those areas as well later on. Also just working on social skills in general with peers. So as they get older, and then also even dating. One big area for group criteria that we try to have is make sure that the child or young teenager has good self-regulation. So for that, it's just making sure that they're able to, if they get frustrated, they have some coping skills. Obviously in group therapy, we can still work on generalizing those skills, but we want to make sure it's a great, or it's a good setting for that individual being treated, but then also the peers in the group. Also, we try to make sure that before someone goes into a group that they have good attendance history. So making sure that they are coming to the individual sessions, so then we can make sure, because if we have a couple kids in a group of 4, because at most we have around 4 children or young teens that can be able to be seen or billed for. So we want to make sure that everyone tries to come as much as they can, because if 2 out of 4 are gone or 3 out of 4 are gone, then we won't have that group being done. So being able to generalize the skills with other peers. Also, our groups are typically 12 weeks long. So kind of like what you heard earlier, that they were 10 weeks, ours are 12 weeks long, and that gives the children and teens more opportunities to like generalize the skills throughout the curriculum, but then also they can also, if it's appropriate, repeat the round up to 2 times. This is a way just so that we can make sure that children and teens are able to work on the skills, and then also being able to generalize the skills that they work on in groups, but outside of the group setting in more of like at home or working on an SEL or respite or any other day hab, any other areas. This also helps us keep on getting more kids involved in the, or getting off the wait list, so then they can, more kids and young teens can be part of these groups. So the first group that we're going to talk about is the social skills group. And this is for children to generalize the social skills in a peer setting. And these peers would be around the same age or developmental stage. And the social skills include peer interaction, collaboration, exploring common interests, perspective taking, interpreting nonverbal cues, and self-advocacy. A lot of these, like I said, these children will be working on a lot of the curriculum more in an individual setting first, and then the whole point is to work on generalizing these skills in the group setting. So with that, some of the curriculums could be what you guys discussed earlier was so social thinking, zones of regulation, and then working on that in group setting. And for this group, speech therapy is the discipline that is involved. The next group that we're going to talk about is the dog group therapy. This is for children or teenagers to work on therapeutic activities alongside agility trained dogs and volunteers. So these volunteers and dogs go through specific training to make sure that they're able to work with children and in a therapy setting. And so once they completed all that, then they're able to come here, and we work with therapists and then also the volunteers and the dogs and the children. The children can work on cognitive flexibility, group planning, and self-advocacy. Each session, they're going to work on different areas, specifically to make sure that the goals are being met for the children that they have, but working on physical, so that could be doing some yoga, doing some other gross motor tasks, even from fine motor wise, making sure that you're squeezing the bottle to put the water inside the dog bowl so the dog can drink. Even as an OT, sometimes we'll work on like brushing the dog. So working on those self-cares, and that can be very motivating for children to be able to do that with the dog. And then, oh, if I'm going to, like brush the dog, it's my turn to brush my hair, that kind of thing. Also cognitive and social skills. So working with others to plan out like the agility course, or just coming up with some sequencing tasks. So it's a great therapy group that a lot of children and teenagers love, and it's fun to see their bonds that they have it too. And the disciplines that are involved currently right now is occupational therapy and speech therapy. In the past, we've had physical therapy too, so it kind of just depends on the need as well. The newest group that we have at ChildServe is the improv group. This started in it's going to start in fall of 2025, and its group curriculum is still being developed to make sure that we best support the clients at ChildServe, but the goals will be focusing on cognitive flexibility, communication, and group planning. And this is used with the training from Camp Yes and also through Indiana University. The disciplines that will be involved in this will be occupational therapy and speech therapy. The next group we're going to talk about is playgroup. So it's similar to what you guys just heard about, but this is designed for children to develop social emotional skills through therapeutic play activities. This is specifically for children to generalize the play skills. So playing a game with peers, maybe even completing like crafts next to each other, and then asking for the glue and asking for the scissors and that kind of stuff. But this is specifically to generalize the play skills that they've worked on in an individual setting with peers and then working on in a group setting. They're going to be matched with children or peers that are around the same age and developmental stage, and then also the social skill level. So depending on what the training therapist per individual feels where they're at, that's how we're going to match with the groups, with the peers. Emotional regulation is addressed when playing with peers. So think about the zones of regulation or size of problem, those kind of things we would address in it for when you're playing a game. So it's okay if you lose, any of that kind of stuff. What should we do? Say good job to your peers, any of that kind of stuff. And the discipline that is evolved for that is occupational therapy. The next group is life skills group. So this is a big area that I actually do currently right now. And so I work with teens and young adults for ages 12 to 21 to generalize the chores and social skills in a group setting. Various chores include cooking, sweeping, vacuuming, making a bed, and completing dishes. Each of these skill groups is catered to the teens and young adults needed. So like we talked about earlier, a lot of these teenagers are working on these skills more in an individual setting beforehand from the evaluation that they had. And then the whole point for this is to generalize these skills. So thinking about as these teenagers and young adults get older, our job is to help them be more independent as an occupational therapist. So getting them ready for that next chapter of life. So making sure that they're ready in case they end up living in a group home, so that they're more independent with, okay, I'm going to take care of my room. I'm going to be able to do all these chores, also living on their own. So making sure that they're aware of doing that, and then think about the organization and the executive functioning of making sure that we're always going to be working on these chores to make sure that we're healthy, making sure that you do the medicine management, all that kind of stuff, but working on in a group skills or in a group setting. Also, what's kind of nice about this is sometimes people live in an apartment with friends, and so making sure that we address those kind of skills in this group helps with it. So then, okay, you're going to have roommates. What are some things that we can work on and that kind of stuff. We also always have leisure skills during those times. So bringing back those games, let's do some games. Okay, if you lose, what should we do? Let's work with peers to decide what game we're going to play. Sometimes we're figuring out like the, electronic games, and they all love that too, but making sure we are able to be a good winner and that kind of stuff too. So also a lot of our individuals will do the groups at ChildServe, and then I actually take a couple of groups every fall to Drake University in the fall with the doctorate OT program students. So I usually have about 4 students over there, and the professors there too. And what we do is we use their setting, and they have an apartment setting that is great for our individuals because they love to go over there because then they're around more people their age. It's also fun for them in case they're going to college to be able to, like, okay, I'm going to be going to college. Here's a group setting or a college setting. So this is what it's like here. Where would I go for this? Where would I find this? That kind of stuff is nice. But a lot of times too, our teenagers and young adults are ready to get, outside of ChildServe, and they're excited to just go somewhere different to work on these skills. What's been nice about us doing it there is that they are able to be with the students there. Obviously, I'm there too, and I work with them too. And then the students eventually take over, and I'm supervising the students. But our clients love it because they are with people like their age. They have different ideas, but then also they're able to use the setting. So working on making the bed there, putting the clothes in the closet, putting the clothes in the dresser, any of that kind of stuff. They also have a kitchen that is a big kitchen, a kitchen table that will play, as you can see on the bottom of the picture, that you can play a lot of games at. They also have a Hy-Vee. I don't know if you can see that up here, but they have a Hy-Vee where it's great for them to work on grocery shopping, also working on the job skills there too. So that's fun in case they end up working at Hy-Vee or Target or anywhere like that using cash register. We can work on those skills. So the students really love it, but then also the clients love it too. So it's a great collaboration. And the program or the discipline that is involved in that is occupational therapy. The next group that I'm going to talk about is job skills group. This is for teens and young adults ages 12 to 21 to work on the skills needed for the jobs. This includes executive functioning, so that organization, multitasking, ideation, completion of all the different tasks needed, time management, any of that kind of stuff, money management too, social skills, interviews, self-cares, completing various tasks for jobs that are focused. So sometimes we bring into the self-cares of what do we need to do to make sure that we keep a job for the self-cares, making sure that we address taking showers daily, putting deodorant on, making sure we have clean clothes, what are some appropriate clothes to wear for an interview versus a job. Social skills, so keeping those boundaries of making sure that we don't hug everyone that comes through, that kind of stuff, or what's some expected conversations that we could have with others. Also, we work on even just having like a lunchtime or a break. So what are some things that you could do that you could talk to, or what are some foods that you could eat using the vending machine even with peers or coworkers at the job. So there's lots of different areas that we work on with those skills. Another area that sometimes I work on is just even initiating conversation with others, because that's a big area that a lot of teens have been saying that's hard when they work, is like initiating conversation, ending conversation with customers that come through. So that is something that we address as well in that group. And the disciplines involved right now is occupational therapy in that. The next group is Snack Shack group. So a mobile cart is where the teens and young adults work on generalizing the life skills and social skills. A lot of these teenagers that do the Snack Shack cart have worked in the IDL group and also job skills group, and then applying all that into the Snack Shack group. So they are able to sell various items that include popcorn, candy, trail mix, applesauce, pop, juice, water, fidgets, Play-Doh, all kinds of different areas. We work on money management, and then the social skills of initiating conversation like we just talked about with others, or even just working on you know, like working with peers. So, okay, I will do the cash register right now. I'm gonna have, you know, like who wants to do asking the customers what they want, and who wants to hand out the items, and then taking turns, and just any of that kind of stuff. This is a great area for us to also address while we're working, like what are some expected things to say to people that are coworkers, but also customers. So this is a great fun area that a lot of teenagers love using, and just to work on the skills. And then the last group that I'm going to talk about is the peers group. And the peers group is where we work on, I know we're going to be talking about it later, but I'm trained in the peers, but addresses social skills through the curriculum that is developed at UCLA, and addresses initiating a conversation, exiting conversation, planning get-togethers, and handling disagreements. Also, dating can be addressed if it is an area of interest. We've had some groups where the individuals and the families really want to work on that, so we bring that into it. Some groups may also have mental health therapists that provide the parent coaching during the group sessions. And the disciplines that are involved for that one is occupational therapy and speech therapy. Are there any questions?
There aren't any in the chat right now. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you.
All right, well, I can go ahead and pull up my slideshow. So as I'm getting that pulled up, I'll start introducing myself. So my name is Audrey. I'm the a speech language pathologist at the Center for Disabilities and Development. And I'm primarily going to be talking to you today about our peer social skills groups that we offer at the CDD. But I know the other presenters who have presented today also provide peers. So the information I'm talking about is applicable to our groups at CDD, but would likely be applicable to peers groups that you find anywhere else in Iowa or beyond. And I'll talk a little bit about that too. So today, these are our goals for today. When I'm talking about peers, I always like to spend a little bit of time just talking about why we might want to think about considering some more social skills support in that adolescent and young adult stage. And then we'll talk about peers and what are those evidence-based strategies that are used and what a peers group looks like. And then we'll talk about how to get involved if that's something you're interested in. So why do we want to think about social communication skills for adolescents and young adults? So I won't spend too much time on this slide because I know that a lot of this is information that many of us are familiar with, but we know that there are social difficulties in neurodivergent adolescents. So difficulties with that social communication or social awareness, like perspective taking, difficulty with interpreting certain social cues, and sometimes maybe those difficulty with peer entry. So maybe when we're trying to join a conversation or meet new people, something doesn't go so well. And so that initial chance where we're trying to get to know a new person, there can be difficulties there. And so we see some of these challenges. We see just fewer reciprocal friendships or more or less quality of friendships in our teens and young adults. So we maybe don't have as many close friends, or those friends that we have, they're not quite that close best friendships that have all those qualities of a really good friendship. And so sometimes we see also just a little bit more online friends than real life friends. And while we always talk to our teens, there's no problem with online friends. They don't always have those same qualities that we get in the real life friends, and they don't always provide us those same benefits of being someone who can be there for you on a hard day and, you know, come over and get ice cream with you. And so another thing we can kind of see is when we have those fewer friendships or lower quality of friendships, sometimes that leads to a little bit less independence in that adulthood and a little bit more dependence on caregivers. So we'll talk about that a little bit more on this next slide. So here's some more reasons about why we might want to consider social skills support in this age. So just in general, we know that social skills that we need in the younger years are really not the same as what we need in that kind of older adolescent age. So they become a little bit more complex, they become more nuanced, interactions become less play-based, and they become more focused around conversations, interests change as well. And so we might have a lot of individuals who have participated in social skills groups when they were younger in those elementary ages, and maybe developed a lot of really nice skills. And then all of a sudden, their peers are kind of doing different things and they're needing new skills to continue to support building those friendships in that age. And so social confidence, we also know, is a really just important factor that helps us keep relationships, both friendships and romantic relationships. And it's also really important in job settings. Social confidence just refers to that ability to make meaningful connections with other people. And then when we think about how we want to support that transition into next stages of life, social communication is a really big part of that as well. So we know that having one or two close friends can really help that adjustment as we age. We tend to grow up with our friends, and so we learn to be independent by making mistakes with our friends. Our friends are able to teach us things like things we might not always want to talk to our parents about, like how to curl your hair or what kind of deodorant you get from the store. So having those peers to rely on can really help with that independence in later stages, and can just be a protective factor for our mental health, for the negative effects of things like bullying or teasing. Because on a hard day, friends are the ones that we go to. So in general, in this stage of adolescence and young adults, our social skills support, we really want to be focused on supporting adolescents and making those valuable connections with other people. So our goal is never really to change who they are or how they're presenting in the world, really just to help them make those meaningful connections, and hopefully the skills we're teaching them are helping them and be able to do that. So this just talks about what we've talked about already, but in general, having those meaningful friendships can increase our independence, our self-esteem, increase how often we're going out and participating in activities in the community, and decrease some of those negative effects that we know can be common in adolescents and young adults in general, but also specifically those on the spectrum. So we'll talk a little bit about Peers now. So Peers, as others have mentioned, was developed at UCLA. It's a really well-known and world-renowned program. They have developed many programs since they first started. So it started as just a teen group, and then they developed their young adults curriculum. They also developed a preschoolers curriculum, and have some other specific groups that we'll talk about later. At CDD, we just provide the adolescents and young adults groups. Peers at UCL actually just started disseminating their Peers for Preschoolers training. So we are working on getting training at CDD. So be on the lookout in the future, because we will probably be providing those groups in the future. But for right now, just the teens and young adults. It was originally developed for individuals on the spectrum, but they've done a lot of research in using this with other groups, other populations, and it's found to be effective in supporting those skills in many populations, including those with ADHD, just general social communication difficulties, or mental health disorders like anxiety and depression as well. So one thing there are a lot of things that we really like about Peers, and are kind of the big reasons that we continue to provide Peers and choose Peers at CDD. One big reason is really that it's very, very well researched and developed. So it built on the research findings from the past of what is effective for teaching social skills. And it was also well researched as a group and as a curriculum. So they provided the group to hundreds and hundreds of teens on the spectrum, and continued to find that it was effective and that it was building skills in these groups. Another thing that's great about it is that it shows not only just developing those skills during the group, but that individuals who participate are maintaining the skills as well. So they're continuing to show these skills months or years after finishing a group. Then we like that it really focuses on developing those skills to establish close friendships, because like we said, that's one of the most important things we want to support in this age group. There are a lot of things it does to encourage that generalization and maintenance of skills. And so one of those things is some weekly homework assignments to immediately start practicing skills kind of out in the real world. And then another thing it really focuses on is helping individuals find sources of friends. So we don't just want everyone to come to the group and make friends with each other. That often does happen. And we love that, and we are happy to see that. But we spend a lot of time really working with the teen, the young adult, their parents, to help them find places to go to meet people who are going to most likely be meaningful friendships for them, or potential sources of friends. And then we really focus on teaching what we call ecologically valid social skills. So this means it's not just something we think a person should do. It's what studies have shown that socially successful people are doing in the real world on a regular basis. So kind of an example we like to talk about with this is a lot of times people will give advice to say, just go up and introduce yourself to that person. and maybe they'll be your friend, which sounds nice, but when you think about it, if you just walk up to someone and say, "Hi, I'm Audrey," and then that's it, they might not know what to say, and the conversation might kind of stop. So we talk about, what is a different way to approach that conversation, and what do people do that works and helps them kind of meet people for the first time. So these groups are 14 to 16 week groups. So that teen group is going to be a 14-week long group. The young adult group is 16 weeks. So it's appropriate for motivated individuals, so individuals who are wanting to learn these skills, wanting to make more meaningful friendships. And so during these skills, the participants are going to be taught these social skills, and then they're going to be given the opportunity to practice those skills with coaching and feedback from one of our group leaders. And then at the same time, their social coaches are going to be attending a separate session with, at CDD, it's with psychologists or social workers or speech pathologists. And those social coaches are going to be being taught all of the same things that the participants are learning. And then also given some information about how to support their teen or young adult in building these skills outside of the group. So usually social coaches are going to be parents, but it can really just be any trusted adult in that individual's life. So we've had grandparents in the past, we've had respite providers, we've had could be an adult sibling, anyone who's just a meaningful person in that person's life. And one thing that's really valuable about having these social coaches is a lot of research has shown that parent involvement is known to be one of the most important things to help lead to those best outcomes through social skill intervention, especially with that maintenance piece. So keeping the skills going after a group gets done. One thing we can sometimes see in social skills intervention is we get really good during the group, and then those skills stop because no one's, practicing them with you regularly or talking about them with you after the group is done. But with this social coaching piece, the parents have all of the skills that we as providers or group leaders have. So ideally, that kind of social skills intervention is never going to end because that teen or young adult's able to work with their parents and go to them for advice on how to work through things in the future. And this is also just something that is something that we do every single day. We all have parents or peers that we go to for our social coaches, to ask how to respond to a text, or this person said this to me, what do you think I should say? So it just gives a little bit more of a structured way to have that social support. So this is kind of the format of the peers groups. So we have the adolescent and young adult groups are going to be happening at the same time, or the adolescent and young adults are going to be in one room. And then the parent or social coaches group are going to be in another room. And a typical layout of a session would be, we would start with homework review. So we would talk about the homework assignments from last week, talk about so well, any suggestions for next time, give a lot of praise for completing that homework. And then we're going to go through a lesson. So we'll teach a certain social skill, that whatever the topic is of that day. Then there's usually going to be some kind of role play demonstration. So sometimes we use videos, and those videos are usually pretty kind of exaggerated. So our teens and young adults usually get a kick out of them when there are certain social errors going on in the videos. Or sometimes we do real life demonstrations as well. And then we're going to do some practice of whatever that focus skill is for the day. And then we do the reunification, which just means the parents or social coaches come together with the teens and young adults. We review what we talked about and then talk about homework for the next week. So this is just kind of a quick overview of what those lessons are. So in the teen group, we're going to spend a lot of time focusing on those conversational skills, and really focusing on how do we use those conversations to find common interests with other people, because those common interests, we say over and over again, are the foundation of friendships. And then as the group goes throughout the weeks, those skills that we focus on get a little bit more complex and they kind of build on each other. So we talk about how to start a conversation or how to join a group conversation. We'll go over electronic communication, because that's a huge part of how teens and young adults communicate. So texting, social media, safety on electronics and all those things. How to host a get together, and how to handle some of those more difficult things. So handling disagreements or a reputation or bullying or teasing as well. And then the young adults curriculum is really very, very similar. We go over almost all the same things that we do in the teen group. The biggest difference is that we do have a few weeks that are dedicated to going over skills for dating. So a person who would benefit from peers, like we said, is someone who's motivated to learn these skills. So if there's a teen or young adult who's like, I'm good, I don't need more friends, it might not be the best time for them to do peers, because it's not something they're interested in. We don't want to force that on someone who's not interested in learning those skills. But we do have many, many teens and young adults who are wanting to make more friends, and they would be a really good fit for this group. A lot of the group is very conversation based, and so it is a good fit for someone who has average or pretty close to average language skills. That being able to come weekly is really important, just because those skills do build on each other. We always have people who miss every once in a while. But if you're going to miss, more than a third of the group or something like that, it might be best to wait until the next time around the group's being offered. That teen group is generally best for about kind of 12 to 18 or so years old. And then that young adult group is really kind of intended for individuals in that post-secondary stage of life, so kind of post-high school. But we do sometimes have seniors in high school who would be a good fit for that group as well. And it would be really appropriate just for anyone who is having social communication difficulties that could be explained by any of these diagnoses, including autism. So if you're wanting to get involved in peers at CDD, you can have your doctor make a referral to the CDD for the peers program specifically. And there's the referral number that your doctor can call to get that initiated. This is kind of our tentative plan for our next few groups available. We try to run them at multiple times throughout the year, so that, if a certain time frame doesn't work for you one time, it might work for you again in a future fall or spring or summer. And then we also do try to group mostly by ages. So we usually have kind of younger teens groups going on, and then older teens groups going on at various parts of the year. But we do accept referrals at any time. So if you just kind of want to get the referral process started, you can definitely have your doctor get that started at any time. If you're interested in peers, but making it to a group here at one of the other facilities around Iowa isn't an option, there's a ton of available resources through UCLA that you can definitely explore. So they do virtual groups pretty often, or they have self-paced virtual groups that you can sign up for through their website. This book, The Science of Making Friends, is really intended for kind of getting parents started on how to support these skills in their teens. And then they have an app that goes through a lot of this information as well. So feel free to explore those options if that would be a better option for you. Any questions?
There was just a question in the chat about the slides and the recording. I just wanted to let everybody know that the recording of this Lunch and Learn and all the available slides will be emailed out to registrants in the next couple days, so you will all receive that. If anybody else has any questions, you can always type them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask your question aloud to any of our speakers, not just Audrey. There is a question in the chat from Holly confirming Peers is not for elementary aged kiddos. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, we typically only offer it for teens and young adults at CDD. A lot of the programs maybe, or the information can be applicable to kind of older elementary kiddos, but the curriculum isn't like specifically designed for that age group. The Peers for Preschoolers group that we hopefully will be offering soon is kind of for that like younger elementary age. So like 4 to 6 is what they say, but we'll learn more about it soon. But I think that probably could be stretched a little bit older for that younger elementary age.
I know.
And then there was a, oh, go ahead.
When we went to training there, that was something that they did talk about, that they were trying to create, but they have not. I haven't seen it on their website yet, but I know that they have that preschool. So yeah, same thing.
And then there was a question about, is there a summer social skills program through the U of I, perhaps through a different department than CDD?
Wendell Johnson, which is the Speech and Hearing Center through the graduate program, does typically offer them every summer. And those include younger elementary school age as well. I know they are doing it this summer. Social climbers is what they're called. So if you Google social climbers at Wendell Johnson, you probably could find some enrollment information there.
We can try to make sure if we can look that up and include it with the recording when we email things out. Audrey, do you run into dating issues for high school age kids since the dating is in the older age group?
Yeah, I'll say it hasn't come up that we've had a lot of teenagers asking for that information. But I think really it would probably more happen in that older kind of high school age teen group. So if it were to come up, we would definitely explore providing a little bit of information on dating for those teenagers, because we know individuals date as young as high school.
We've actually had that discussion last year and the year before, because we had kids that wanted to date and that were dating. And so we had to be very specific and pinpoint exactly what they were asking for. And did they understand those unwritten rules? And so, yeah, that we watched Love on the Spectrum. And then we would talk about that. So it was very good, but it definitely, I believe more and more, they need to have instruction or help with those situations.
Absolutely.
And then there was a question about resources for virtual social groups. And Irene, actually, Autism Society has an online group that meets every Wednesday night at 6:30. So I'll make sure to get that linked when we send out the email as well. Question for Christine. Does ChildServe also offer the different age peer groups?
Yep. Yep, ChildServe does offer it. So we do peers. It depends on how many individuals with our wait list need those specific groups, but yes, we do peers. We've addressed dating sometimes too. Just like Jan and Audrey was saying too, we want to make sure that individuals, a lot of them like have interest more the older teenagers, like we're saying, but also making sure that unexpected rules of like knowing, especially when they're starting to go to college, knowing to not go over to, you know, a girl's, room at 10 o'clock asking for a hug and that kind of stuff we address, and we talk about that kind of stuff. But yep, we do it.
Perfect. Are there any other questions? We're just hitting 1 o'clock now. You can always, we'll make sure that email addresses for our speakers are included with the resources that we email out. And you can always email Autism Society of Iowa if you have any additional questions. And we thank our speakers, Audrey, Christine, Jan, and Stephanie, for joining us today. And thank you everybody for joining us. And we hope you have a great day.
Thank you.